Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us here at the Digital Additive Manufacturing Conference. We're really excited to have you. One of the last two remaining talks of today does include Shane Fox twice. Shane Fox is our CEO and co-founder of LInk3D. He's a technology evangelist, entrepreneur at heart, and is at the front line of the industrial 3D printing revolution. While working at Within Technologies, a software company that was developed and designed software tools for additive manufacturing, Shane's technology innovation actually reached over 35 countries, specializing in topology optimization. He helped create the products known today as Within Medical. In May 2014, Autodesk acquired Within, and Shane went on to lead their product architecture and business development for their additive manufacturing division. So after having left Autodesk, Shane co-founded LInk3D with a focus to automate and optimize the entire additive manufacturing workflow. LInk3D was also selected as one of the Firestarter companies, which also previously featured Elon Musk, Michael Dell, among others. I invite you, Shane Fox, to take the floor.
Thanks, Janet. That was a nice introduction. I didn't know you were going to do that. Can you hear me okay, Andrew? Okay. So I think we have around 25 minutes or so to go through this presentation on how to navigate the risks of scaling up additive and how you can get ahead of the curve. And then after that, I'm really excited because we're going to have my friend, an executive from HP, in a fireside chat. So I don't have a fireplace, so I'm going to have to find one for this, but I'm really excited to have Ryan on here more so than myself do this talk. But I think today was fantastic, and again, just want to thank everybody for coming out. I mean, it's been incredible. And for those of you who do not know, LInk3D is essentially an operating system for the additive manufacturing production floor. Our core applications include workflows designed specifically for additive that you can configure and custom create. We provide a manufacturing execution system, and we have now brought to market our new quality management system. So just a little bit about LInk3D if you do not know. So let's get into the presentation. So probably, I would think over the last 5 years or so, we have engaged with hundreds of organizations, and even in my previous life at Autodesk and at Within Technology, I've been fortunate to be on both ends, the design, engineering, research side, but with my topology optimization background, and then on the LInk3D side with the operational efficiency type background I have. And whenever we engage with our customers, we really try to identify where they are in their journey with additive. So we kind of coined our own phrases at LInk3D. They could be interchangeable, but the first stage that we identified is what we call the discovery stage. So we like to think of this stage as a potential validation around the concept, use cases, and the value proposition that additive can bring to one's organization. The second, where we see probably most of the industry falling these days, is in the building stage. In this stage, we've seen organizations begin to set a foundation for their digital manufacturing strategy. So some of the best practices or commonalities across this stage we've seen are orgs having a center of excellence, which I think almost every large organization who's adopted additive has. We've seen the scaling or the beginning stages of scaling of additive equipment, validation of materials, parameter sets, and they've also started looking outside to contract manufacturers to validate their processes. So in the last stage, the scaling stage, which is where I hope everybody gets to eventually, sooner than later, this stage, we've really started to see orgs integrate additive into the everyday supply chain. So it's becoming another tool set within the supply chain. And we believe this is to help enable a more intelligent, sustainable, and smarter manufacturing methodology. So here we see people moving with series production or high volume prototyping jigs or fixtures. They really are starting to scale up again on that machine acquisition side. And they are either in the decision process of make or buy, or kind of a hybrid model. So we see a lot of contracted service bureaus, every day getting more and more production work from some of our Fortune 500 manufacturing clients. So this leads into something that LInk3D is very proud of. We've been doing a lot of research. This is the very dumbed down, simplistic version. There's a white paper, and I've been doing some research on this with Janet and other colleagues of mine that we'll be releasing, I think, in the summertime. But we've really tried to apply the maturity model process to additive as it relates to the digital infrastructure within that organization. So today we heard David Dietrich talk about maturity processes around the designing and engineering and the manufacturing. We're really talking about the whole ecosystem, the infrastructure, the IT arrangement when we talk about additive process maturity here. So, okay, my slide's working. So the first stage of our maturity model at LInk3D, which we've gotten a lot of feedback on and tweaked over the time, and I welcome anyone to send me their thoughts, processes, ideas to iterate off this. I want to make this more of an industry standard and an open project with the industry to really create this model. So please send it to me if you can. But we look at the reactive stage, and this is a stage of showing a response to a need. And in this stage, the org typically has a very simple process. They're probably in the discovery stage, and it's kind of a first in, first out mentality. But as you begin to grow or mature with additive, we typically see our customers moving into more of an informed stage. The informed stage is typically where the org starts to process or starts to see a higher number of requests for additive or the beginnings of adoption around additive through various departments within the organization. So thus we start seeing the beginning of a lot of overhead and manual processes around information capture and retrieval. And the third stage, which I think almost everyone that we engage with, and I think luckily a fair majority of the industry has gotten to, is more in that managed stage. The managed stage is really where we start to see the org we'll start to think about implementing third-party solutions or homegrown systems to formalize some of their infrastructure challenges. So that could be best-in-class software, that could be a homegrown MES or workflow system, or they start looking at enterprise-wide systems like a LInk3D or an Authentize or 3YOURMIND, something along those lines. The ultimate goal for LInk3D is what you see here in this blue box. We believe that we can help the industry get from that managed to the automated stage with the proper policy change and the proper change management plan. And when organizations start moving into more of an automated stage of manufacturing, if you look back to the course of time, all industrial revolutions, Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, in order for those industries to scale, automation wasn't a nice to have, it was a must have. And we believe the same thing with additive manufacturing. So, we really start to see organizations here setting up automation processes with the proper infrastructure. They start having closed loop monitoring systems that can be integrated across their machines and all of their hardware assets. This is the stage that I think the industry needs to get to the next phase or the next milestone of additive on the commercialization or scaling side. And then you move into predictive. a little bit more futuristic, but this is where Link3D is going, and we know a lot of our frenemies and the industry as well is going. We believe it's more of an emerging stage. So you might have seen we did some stuff with AR, VR. There's a lot of predictive type of technology methodologies out there that are being experimented in the factory of the future. We've been involved in a couple of these, but this is where we believe the company will start taking advantage of modern or emerging technologies to help predict and forecast much more intelligent business and operational decisions and insights into the optimization of their manufacturing ecosystem. So high level, just wanted to cover the stages of Aam process maturity and what we have considered to be in each one of these stages. Now, when you look at the stages, you also then have risk, right? So there's risk in anything we do. So if we look at the reactive stage, it is our belief, and a lot of folks from the community's belief, that if one of the major risks is the chance that Aam will fail and it will not be able to get off the ground within your org because you're doing this first in, first out type methodology. And we believe, just from a high level, one way to mitigate this risk is to be proactive rather than reactive. So start to think how you can start scaling up infrastructure, how you could start locking down processes, creating a more formalized infrastructure so you don't get trapped in this type of risk. When we look at informed, I've seen a lot of people through the years be stuck here because they're stagnant, they're comfortable. You're a more risk adverse type company. And I think risk adverse type companies are poised to feel this pain or this threat or this risk because they're not willing to take the step forward and make a more informed risk-taking decision. So that's the way we think you can mitigate this risk in this stage. And then when you look at managed, probably again where most people are, personally I believe the biggest risk here is overhead. You have a lot of really bright people doing a lot of mundane or manual jobs, whether it's quoting, scheduling, build preparation, downstream management, whatever it may be, quality assurance people doing a lot of documentation and paperwork. By introducing automation or start thinking about how you can have a more automated infrastructure, it's not going to replace these folks' jobs. It's going to allow them to actually do what it was that they were hired to do, whether it's engineer, innovate, or get products to market faster so you can either retain market share or begin to take market share from a potential customer. So, managed stage, I believe, is the riskiest, and it's the one that needs to be addressed sooner than later. So when you look at automated, I think probably everyone would agree the biggest risk here is just change management or policy change. As you start introducing new technologies, new processes, new policies within an organization, change management becomes your biggest risk. You have people who can't or will not adopt new processes. So it's important that the organization and the vendor or consultant, whoever they're working with, they set a change management strategy in place and they roll it out according to the culture of the organization. So it might be it might be a fast-paced policy change, but it's important to have that strategy and make sure that folks understand why you're going through this change management process, because it's going to make their lives easier, their job simpler, it's going to reduce errors, and they're going to be able to actually go back to do the things that they were meant to do. And the last, I'm going to do the time. Sorry, I just want to check the time. So then the last stage is predictive. I think this is Janet, visionary world dominance. I love it. But with the predictive stage, your biggest risk is just having an infrastructure that is set up incorrectly. The old saying goes, bad data in, bad data out. So whether you're building your own homegrown system or you're working with niche players or an enterprise-wide system, having the proper infrastructure set up and the proper databases set up to collect and analyze this information is key to be able to actually receive actionable insights within your business to improve upon bottlenecks and other areas of improvement. So the last few slides here, we'll just talk about some of the risks again in some of the infrastructure or solution offerings that you may have. So if you're looking to adopt workflow or MES or QMS systems, one thing we see is that organizations, whether they're automotive, defense, consumer product, oil and gas, a lot of them have a homegrown system mentality. And albeit it may be great, but you do set yourself up for several major risk points. Relying on internal IT support. I'm sure we all know the world is changing. Costs are being cut, and it appears, or it seems, that a lot of IT organizations are being shrunk, and their tasks and their projects are growing exponentially. So having to really rely on the support of your internal IT system to build or maintain a workflow MES or QMS system is it's a very interesting risk when you're trying to scale. You also have single point of failures. So you may have one guy from your internal team or one lady from your internal team, and they quit, they retire, they get fired, and you have a single point of failure. You had a system that kind of worked or did work, and now you have no one to maintain it. And again, it's just not, most organizations, it's not their core business. So you have a gap in skill set. When we look at best in class, I think the biggest thing here is best in class systems aren't connected. They're siloed. So the industry talks a lot about the digital twin or the digital thread, or we hear all the time companies want an end-to-end platform that does it all. When you have a siloed system that has a closed architecture or closed off API architecture, it's very hard to scale up. It's almost impossible. You also have a lot of integration overhead, if it is possible. And you're limited in flexibility because these are siloed systems. More times than not off the shelf, and they can't be configured or developed or customized around your specific needs. And lastly, you have the enterprise. You have the enterprise scale up path. Some of the risks here, you're very vendor dependent. So you have to have a lot of trust in the vendor. You have to go through a very stringent selection process in whoever it may be. And you have to make sure that your vision aligns with their vision, or at least somewhat aligns with their vision, because a lot of software companies pivot, they go off in different directions. You may not be the biggest cash source for that organization, and your voice may not be heard. So, one way to look at this is enterprise systems that are highly configurable, highly customizable. They have an open style of architecture to connect into best class systems, and that an internal IT team can support. So the key takeaways, again, we covered the different stages that organizations are in. So it's discovery, building, scaling. Then we looked at their process maturity throughout these different stages. I think, we all need to get to automated in order, again, to take us to that next level. And we're all in this additive journey together. So if anyone has any comments or feedback or wants to take a first look at the research or white paper we're coming out with, or wants to add to this presentation at all, please, I'm more than happy to listen and take your feedback and improve upon this process. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone. And are we doing Q&A?
Yeah,
great. Click on one. Okay. Janet, you're on mute.
I should know this by now. So from an anonymous person, what are the typical challenges you see large enterprises face when they want to collaborate with emerging technologies and startups like yourself that you've named in the speech?
Jenna, I'm sorry. Can you just repeat the first part?
What are the typical challenges you see large enterprises face when they want to collaborate with emerging technology startups like yourself?
It's a great question. I think first is resource availability. So a lot of times, companies like Link3D or others have a vision, and a lot of startups, at least I could speak for Link3D, will stop at nothing to make that vision reality. And I think one of the challenges for an organization when picking a vendor to work with, whether it's hardware or software, whatever it may be, is that that company has a customer operations team focused on listening and retaining and feeding back that information to the technology or engineering organization. Because it's important that we as customers drive our roadmap, or we as vendors drive our roadmap, but it's also important that we listen to the needs of the industry, because they're the practitioners. They're the ones who are boots on the ground. They know the processes better than a lot of the software manufacturer or software engineering companies like Link3D. So that's the approach we take, right? Our customers drive our roadmap. So I think it's clear communication, it's understanding of the organization. It's really not just about the technology, but it's understanding the team, the mentality, and the process they go about handling and developing their roadmap. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that does. Thank you. We have a more technical question here from Priyesh Mehta. She says, "Hi Shane, thank you for putting together this conference. Can you talk a little bit more about Link3D's auto coding engine for DMLS?" And Fabio wants to know more about EVM parts. Does it give orientation support? How flexible is this when you're talking about flexibility in the workflow to enable simple to comprehensive pricing models so companies could have that digital thread?
So I'll try to answer this in parts. Janet, you might have to help me stay on track here. As far as DMLS and EBM quoting simulations go, we have a robust tool set. We have a physics-based model that takes into account quite a bit of various factors, from the physical environment to the digital environment and what goes on inside that actual machine. We work closely with certain DMLS providers as well as GE to better understand their technology, their machines, and certain things that affect build time, material usage, or other type of consumables within that machine. And we constantly are iterating and constantly releasing new updates to our simulation engine in order to have our costing as accurate as possible. We're working on a couple new projects that I can't comment on with some of the major machine manufacturers, sitting on peer groups with them to start implementing some of their know-how in. But we can't talk about it yet. So that would cover, I would hope it would cover the support question. And then Janet, do you mind repeating the second question?
I have forgotten that one for now. But we can move on to the next one, and if someone can bring up a question that they think is required, feel free to put in the Q&A. So Shane, management, risk assessment and management. So assuming Link3D supports integration points, what risks do you see with disparate systems in place today, and how can Link3D help mitigate those risks?
Disparate systems. Okay, I think I understand the word disparate. So if I understand that question correctly, when I think a lot of folks in the software business make integration sound very easy. almost like it's plugging in an electric plug into a socket. You plug it in and it works. The fact is that it's not always that easy. You know, newer architected products like LInk3D that has more of a state-of-the-art type of architecture, or more forward-thinking architecture, our system is able to be quite open. But when you look at traditional systems or siloed systems, which I believe are more of the disparate, if I understood that word correctly, it all depends. Sometimes we're at the mercy of these larger organizations, like an SAP, Oracle, Team Center, and sometimes they have to open APIs for vendors. Sometimes they're already open, but we have to understand them. So it's a learning process that we go through with our customers. So although we've had successful integrations into very, very well-known branded software systems, it's never a guarantee until there's discovery, and there's an agreement upon all parties on the best path forward. So that's how I would answer that question.
Great. We only have 1 minute left, but we'll choose the highest voting question. How do you think we can speed up the maturity process to move from one stage to the other stage on the right side?
I think from day one, I believe it was David, there was a talk today where we were talking about, I think it was David Dietrich who was talking about setting up integrated or collaborative teams. I forget the word he had used, but I think when the organization is setting their digital strategy, their digital manufacturing strategy, even before they're going out to acquire their first machine. Janet, I know you worked with some pretty well-known organizations that before they've even installed their first machine, they're looking at their infrastructure. They're looking at, okay, we have the hardware, we have the machines, or we have the know-how, or we have the partners, but what does our operational infrastructure look like? Because what we see is when a lot of customers have homegrown or siloed systems and they get to a tipping point, you have to take sometimes a few steps backwards, right? In order to really deploy a system that can meet all of your needs from quality or execution or workflow standpoint. So my biggest thing is, I think Janet, you coined this as leapfrog. You know, when you start getting into that reactive stage and really start discovering additive, you know, having the right type of infrastructure can kind of leapfrog or launch you, across everything to more of an automated stage. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And that'll be it for the remaining Q&A, but Alquist and Andre, we will get back in touch with you. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next fireside chat with Ryan Palmer, SVP at HP, and Andrea will be doing the announcement. Stay tuned.